She didn't raise her voice. That's what still gets me. We were standing in the kitchen, the light over the sink humming softly, and she said it the same way someone asks you to pass the salt. Calm, careful, almost gentle. She said she needed space. Not because I did anything wrong, not because there was someone else, just space. At first, I didn't even understand what she meant. Space sounded temporary, harmless, like a weekend away or a few quiet nights. Then she added, almost as an afterthought, that it might help if I stayed somewhere else for a few weeks, just until she could clear her head. My chest tightened, but I didn't interrupt her. She spoke like she had already rehearsed this conversation, like she had practiced sounding reasonable so I wouldn't panic. And the scariest part was that it worked. I found myself nodding, trying to keep my face neutral, trying to be the kind of partner who listens instead of reacts. Inside, though, something was slipping. This wasn't a fight. There was no anger to push back against. Just this quiet decision she had already made without me. I kept waiting for her to say she loved me, or that this was hard for her too, but she just stood there, watching my reaction like she was checking off a box. When she finally stopped talking, the room felt too big, too empty. I realized I was the only one holding my breath. And in that moment, before I even packed a bag, I felt it. This wasn't just about space. Something had already ended. I told her I understood. I don't know why that word just came out of my mouth automatically, like muscle memory. I said it slowly, carefully, as if saying it the right way might make it true. She visibly relaxed when I said it, like she'd been bracing for resistance that never came. She smiled, a small one, and thanked me for being mature about it. That word, mature, landed heavier than she realized. It made it sound like disagreeing would have been childish, like my discomfort would have been a flaw. I swallowed whatever I was feeling and nodded again, because at that point, I was more afraid of losing her than losing myself. I went to the bedroom and started pulling out a duffel bag. Not a suitcase. A duffel bag felt temporary, honest, like I was going on a short trip, not quietly removing myself from my own home. I could hear her moving around the apartment, opening drawers, tapping on her phone, living her normal evening while I folded my life into a bag. When I came back out, she kissed my cheek, not my lips, my cheek. The kind of kiss you give someone you care about but aren't attached to in that moment. She told me to text her when I got there safely. Then she went back to her phone, scrolling, already elsewhere. I stood by the door for a second longer than necessary, waiting for something, anything to stop me. A question, a hug, a crack in her certainty. Nothing came. So I walked out, listening to the door close behind me, realizing too late that I hadn't been asked to leave temporarily. I had been asked to make it easier for her to let go. That first night away didn't feel real. It felt like a pause, like someone had pressed the button and told me not to touch anything until further notice. I crashed on a friend's couch, staring at a ceiling I didn't recognize, replaying her words over and over, trying to find the version of them that didn't hurt. She texted me good night around midnight, just one line. Sleep well. No heart, no follow-up. I stared at the message longer than I should have, telling myself it meant she still cared. that if she didn't, she wouldn't have texted at all. I replied the same way, careful not to sound needy, even though that's exactly what I felt.
Lying there in the dark, I kept checking my phone, half expecting another message, and "I miss you," and "Are you okay?" Something that would pull me back into the center of her thoughts. Nothing came. The silence stretched, and with it a quiet fear settled in. This was easier for her than it was for me.
The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, disoriented for a few seconds, reaching instinctively for my phone instead of for her. I sent a casual, "Hope you have a good day" text, the kind couples send without thinking. She replied hours later with, "Thanks." Just that. That's when it hit me for the first time. Space wasn't neutral. It wasn't empty. Space was distance, and distance, if left alone long enough, doesn't stay still. It grows. The days after that blurred together in a way that made time feel unreliable. I kept telling myself it had only been a couple of days. Then I'd check the calendar and realize almost a week had passed. Each day without her felt heavier than the last, not because anything dramatic happened, but because nothing did. Her messages started to change, subtly at first. Where she used to ask questions, now she just reacted. Where she used to check in, now she responded when it was convenient. I noticed myself rereading old conversations just to remember what it felt like to be wanted, to be included without having to ask. I suggested meeting up for coffee one afternoon. Nothing serious, just a neutral place, an easy conversation. She said she wasn't ready yet, that she needed more time to think. The way she said it made it sound like I was the distraction, not the relationship we were supposedly trying to save. At night, my thoughts got louder. I started cataloging every small moment from the past year, wondering if this had been building without me noticing. Every late work night, every time she seemed distant but said she was just tired, I kept asking myself the same question. When did I stop being someone she needed to come home to? What scared me most wasn't the idea that she might leave. It was the feeling that she already had, and I was the only one still pretending this was temporary. I kept thinking about how normal everything had felt before she asked for space, and that contrast messed with my head more than the silence. We had routines, small, boring ones, that I didn't realize had anchored me. Sunday grocery runs, arguing over what to watch, then watching nothing, falling asleep with the TV still on. Nothing dramatic, just us. That's what made this so disorienting. There was no big fight to point to, no betrayal I could clearly name yet, just the sudden absence of a life that had felt stable enough to build on. I started wondering if I had imagined the closeness, or if I had simply been the last to realize it was fading. One afternoon, out of habit, I drove past the apartment after work. I didn't plan to stop, I just wanted to feel close to something familiar. Her car was there, the lights were on. For a second, relief washed over me. She was home, safe, normal. Then I realized I wasn't welcome there anymore. I sat in my car for a minute longer than I should have, staring at the building like it might explain something to me. That's when it hit me. She was living her days without noticing my absence, and that realization hurt more than any argument ever could. I drove away feeling smaller than when I arrived, finally understanding that whatever this space was supposed to fix, it wasn't bringing us closer. It was quietly teaching her how to live without me. That night, I opened my phone without really thinking and scrolled through her social media. I told myself I was just curious, just checking in the way people do when they're apart. I wasn't prepared for how quickly my stomach dropped. She'd been tagged in a photo from earlier that evening. Nothing outrageous, just a group of people at a bar, drinks on the table, low light, everyone leaning in close. She was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. Not posed, not polite, free. I zoomed in without meaning to, my thumb moving on its own. There was a guy next to her I didn't recognize. His arm wasn't around her, but it was close enough to feel intentional, close enough that if I'd been there, I would have noticed. And that's what made it hurt. She hadn't mentioned going out. hadn't mentioned him, hadn't mentioned anything at all. I locked my phone and set it face down like it might burn me. My mind immediately started negotiating with itself. It's nothing. She's allowed to go out. You're the one who agreed to this. Every rational thought felt thin, like paper trying to cover something heavier underneath. What stayed with me wasn't jealousy. It was the ease of it. The way she looked like someone who wasn't waiting for a relationship to stabilize before enjoying her life. And for the first time, the question shifted in my head. It wasn't who is he, it was how long has this been easier without me? I didn't say anything to her about the photo right away. Part of me didn't want to seem paranoid. Another part of me was scared of the answer. So instead, I waited, watching how the days unfolded, listening more carefully to what she didn't volunteer. When I finally worked up the nerve to ask if there was someone else, I chose my words carefully. I told her I wasn't accusing her of anything, I just needed honesty. She replied faster than usual, which should have reassured me, but it didn't. She said I was overthinking, that the picture meant nothing, that this space was about her mental health, not about another guy. The explanation was smooth, almost too smooth, and it ended with her asking why I didn't trust her. That question flipped something inside me. Suddenly, I was on defense, apologizing for feeling unsettled, explaining my emotions like they were inconveniences. I hated how quickly I backed down, how easily my doubt turned into guilt. After that conversation, she pulled back even more. Fewer updates, longer gaps. I realized she'd gotten what she needed, not reassurance for me, but confirmation that she could deflect without consequence. And in the quiet that followed, a new kind of tension settled in. Not the sharp kind that demands answers, but the slow, heavy kind that tells you the truth is already there. You're just not ready to accept it yet. By the third week, the word temporary stopped meaning anything. There was no plan for me to come back, no conversation about what we were working towards. My things were still in the apartment, but they felt like placeholders now, like evidence of a life she hadn't bothered to clean up yet. I noticed I was the only one keeping track of time. I was counting days, measuring distance, waiting for a sign that this had an end. She wasn't. She talked about her schedule, her stress, her plans, without once mentioning when we'd see each other again. One evening, I suggested stopping by to grab a few more clothes. She hesitated before saying yes, and that pause said more than her words ever could. When I went over, the apartment looked the same, but it didn't feel like home. The energy was different, neutral, impersonal. There were small changes I couldn't ignore. A new candle I didn't recognize, the couch pillows rearranged, the faint sense that someone else had sat where I used to. Nothing obvious, nothing I could confront her about without sounding irrational. As I left, she thanked me for being respectful of her space. That phrase stayed with me all the way back to my car. I realized then that I wasn't a partner waiting to come home. I was a guest who had overstayed his welcome. I found out by accident. That's the part that still feels unfair, even now. There was no confession, no dramatic reveal, just a casual comment from a mutual acquaintance who didn't know they were stepping on something fragile. I ran into a mutual acquaintance at a coffee shop near my office. We exchanged small talk, the kind you don't really listen to, until she mentioned seeing my girlfriend out the previous weekend. She smiled and said it looked like a double date, then quickly added that she hoped things were going well between us. I didn't correct her. I just nodded, paid for my coffee, and walked out before my reaction could catch up with me. The word double echoed in my head the entire drive home. It wasn't the confirmation that hurt the most, it was how normal it sounded. Later that night, I replayed everything with a new clarity. The space, the silence, the hesitation when I came by. None of it was confusing anymore. It all lined up in a way that left no room for denial. She hadn't needed time to think. She needed me out of the way. And realizing that didn't make me angry right away. It made me feel foolish, like I'd been carefully stepping around someone else's comfort while my own slowly disappeared. The anger came later, but not the kind I expected. It was quiet and heavy, the kind that settles in your chest and makes everything feel slower. What hit me hardest wasn't the idea of her being with someone else. It was how she managed to do it without ever having to face me. I realized she hadn't technically lied. She just framed the truth in a way that kept her hands clean.
asking for space instead of admitting she was moving on, letting me agree so she wouldn't have to feel guilty. That kind of betrayal doesn't leave bruises, but it leaves doubt in places you don't easily get back. For a few days, I didn't reach out at all. No texts, no calls. I needed to know if she'd notice, if my absence would register the way hers had consumed me. It didn't. That silence was its own answer. I started to see the relationship differently, not as something that suddenly broke, but as something that had been slowly erasing me long before I packed that duffel bag. The pain shifted from confusion to clarity, and while that clarity hurt, it also steadied me. For the first time since she asked for space, I stopped waiting for her to decide what happened next. I didn't announce the shift. There was no moment where I told myself I was done. It just happened quietly, the same way everything else had. I stopped checking my phone first thing in the morning. I stopped rereading old messages. I let hours pass without feeling the need to explain myself to someone who wasn't asking. I started making decisions without running them through her in my head. I looked for a place of my own instead of assuming I'd be going back. Signed a lease that felt both terrifying and grounding. The empty apartment didn't feel lonely the way I thought it would. It felt honest. I focused on small, practical things, setting up furniture, cooking meals she never liked, falling asleep without waiting for a goodnight text that might or might not come. Each ordinary moment stitched something back together in me that I hadn't realized was unraveling. She eventually noticed the distance. Her messages changed again, this time carrying a light curiosity. She asked how I was doing, what I'd been up to. No urgency, no apology, just enough interest to see if the door was still open. Reading those messages, I felt a strange calm. The pull wasn't there anymore. I could finally see the pattern for what it was. Not confusion, not miscommunication, but a slow exit she'd hoped I'd accept without resistance. And in that calm, I understood something important. The power had already shifted. I took my time before responding, not out of strategy, not to make a point, but because I genuinely didn't feel rushed anymore. Her message sat there while I finished what I was doing, while I ate dinner, while I let the quiet of my own place settle around me. When I finally replied, I kept it simple. I told her I was doing well, that I'd moved into a new place, that things felt steady. I didn't ask about her. I didn't fill the silence with questions like I used to. I wished her well and left it at that. She responded almost immediately, surprised, asking when all of that happened. There was a softness to her words, the kind that usually comes when someone realizes they've misjudged how replaceable they were. I stared at that message longer than any of the others, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I finally understood what she was really asking. This wasn't about closure, it was about access, about checking whether I was still where she'd left me. So I answered honestly, without explaining myself. I told her I didn't think meeting up was a good idea, that I'd had time to reflect, and that I'm in a different place now. I thanked her for the time we'd shared and wished her the best. There was no reply after that.
And strangely, I didn't feel the urge to check again. I didn't feel like I'd won or lost. I just felt finished. The kind of finish that comes when you stop asking someone else to confirm your value. Looking back, I understand now that the betrayal wasn't just that she moved on. It was that she asked me to step aside so she wouldn't have to watch me realize it. And the justice in it all wasn't dramatic or visible. It was quiet. It was building a life that didn't include her approval. And it was learning that when someone asks for space, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is take it and never return. Months later, the memory of that kitchen conversation doesn't sting the way it used to. It feels distant now, like recalling a past version of myself I barely recognize. The fear, the confusion, the need to be understood, all of it belongs to someone who didn't yet know he'd be okay on his own. What stayed with me wasn't the loss of the relationship, but the clarity that followed it. I learned how easily love can turn conditional when someone wants an exit without responsibility, how silence can be more honest than explanations, and how quickly self-respect returns once you stop negotiating your place in someone's life. I don't hate her. I don't wish her regret. I just no longer carry the weight of what she chose. The space she asked for ended up giving me something I didn't know I needed, distance from a version of myself that was willing to shrink to keep someone close. And that's the part people don't talk about. Sometimes the real ending isn't when someone leaves, it's when you finally stop waiting for them to come back. That realization didn't arrive all at once. It settled in gradually, showing up in small moments, when I made plans without hesitation, when I laughed without feeling like something was missing, when her name stopped triggering a reaction in my chest. The absence that once felt unbearable became unnoticeable. I understood then that closure doesn't always come from a final conversation or an apology. Sometimes it comes from living well enough that the questions stop mattering, from recognizing that being chosen halfway is the same as not being chosen at all. If there's one thing that experience left me with, it's this. When someone asks you to step back from your own place in their life, believe them the first time. Don't argue for a role they've already rewritten. Walk away with your dignity intact. Because the quiet endings, the ones without shouting or scenes, those are the ones that change you the most. And if you let them, they don't break you, they free you. I don't tell this story because I'm proud of how long it took me to understand what was happening. I tell it because I know how easy it is to confuse patience with loyalty and understanding with self-sacrifice. I stayed quiet because I thought love meant giving someone room to breathe, even if it suffocated me a little in the process. What I know now is that real love doesn't require you to disappear to make someone else comfortable. It doesn't ask you to wait in uncertainty while someone decides whether you're still worth choosing, and it doesn't reward you for being easy to leave. Walking away without a fight felt like losing at the time, but it wasn't. It was the moment I stopped betraying myself to keep someone else calm. And that decision, more than anything she ever did, is what finally gave the story its ending. If I could go back to that night in the kitchen, I wouldn't change what I said. I still would have listened. I still would have stayed calm. Because the truth is, her asking for space revealed something I couldn't have forced out of her any other way. She showed me who she was when she thought I'd quietly wait. And I showed myself who I could be when I didn't. The relationship didn't end with a breakup. It ended with clarity, with the understanding that being left in uncertainty is a choice someone makes for you, and staying in it is a choice you make for yourself. I made mine later than I should have, but I made it fully. That chapter of my life closed without noise, without revenge, without a dramatic last word, just a man stepping forward instead of standing still. And sometimes, that's the cleanest ending you'll ever get.